Data Dump with WAP Tech on a lot of different subjects. This will primarily be about firearms, ballistics, and that sort of thing, and it will be hopefully useful to you if you're watching. But really, this video was caused by me looking up one subject and ending up going off on 4 tangents and not getting anywhere at all. Here we go. On YouTube, you'll find a lot of YouTube firearms channels or gun tube videos where people are firing into ballistic gelatin blocks. Typically, these are either completely transparent or semi-transparent blocks, anywhere from 16 and 18 inches long and 8 inches by 8 inches or 6 inches by 6 inches across. And that works out to 2.5 gallon to 5 gallon of volume, depending on how they're measuring things. There's a lot of differences here. If it's 8 by 8, that's a base of 64 square inches. And if it's 6 by 6, that's 36 square inches. That is 64 to 36. That's almost 2-to-1 ratio just by going from 8 inches across to 6 inches. You use a volume of material, you can make it longer. So they'll be 16 inches long and 6 by 6. And if they're 5 gallon, they may be 18 inch long and 8 by 8. Now, the poundage of the material determines some things about it. Now, this material, while being fired into, comes in 2 varieties. Ones that show permanent cavity and temporary cavity after firing, or the ones that have a lot of elasticity, emulating tissue for a target for hunting or for self-defense, being representative of the human. Now, these are comparative mediums. They're not meant to, quote-unquote, simulate any particular material, like meat, fat, skin, hair. Not really. Except the story of it, where it came in, is called ballistic gelatin and porcine gelatin substitute or simulant, and then previous to that, military experiments using firearms into anesthetized live animals and or just recently euthanized animals, pigs. When examining animals that have been shot by accident on a farm, they noticed that the wounds that they had, in a pig specifically, were very close to the wounds that would happen from that cartridge, from that gun, under those conditions with a human being. So they decided, why don't we just use this for ballistic testing? Well, it's impractical. Pigs are expensive compared to some other material. So what was found out is one of the offshoot or extra materials from slaughtering pigs is a derived material to make gelatin. Jello gelatin, if you buy it, is usually made from pig jello. Pig jelly. 10% gelatin means 10% gelatin, this, Knox gelatin or jello gelatin, in water. 20% means there's more of the gelatin in the water, or you have the same gelatin in less water, by 2-to-1. Now, what that means is that has a density commensurate with the division between them. But here we go. Let's say you wanted to use a 10% concentration of gel as your standard, like the FBI did. Why would you? Well, what they did is they took the meat of the animal before slaughter, layered the meat up to a thickness, and layered all the fat, and layered the skin up to get many, many layers to represent everything you could traverse through. Fire a cartridge into it, like a .22 caliber Magnum, or BB gun pellet was also used as a standard for comparison, and make sure that the speed was paid attention to. Now, the most consistent thing you can fire is what they decided to use for the standard. For calibration, they use a 600 feet per second. Yes, I know it's supposed to be a range, but it's 600 feet per second. BB gun pellet, a steel pellet, and by definition, that was a 17.7 caliber BB gun pellet or an 18 caliber BB gun pellet. Certain number of grams of mass, fired at a certain speed, would go in 3¼ inches if it was 10% gelatin, and 20% gelatin was found consistently in the gelatin to go in 1¾ or something like that. The 10% standard became the standard used by the FBI for comparison testing. But does it emulate animal tissue, even a pig? Because they tested it against the meat, they found that they could get the equivalent. But it required that you do this long preparation and it'd be refrigerated gelatin, fresh from the refrigerator, and you shoot it until you get that calibrated depth, and then you fire a bullet into it. Convoluted, annoying, and expensive, but at least not as impractical as using pigs. They started off with a meat target, Paul Harrell argument. I've done this video before. But anyway, let's move forward. Other materials are also used, including ballistic soap used in other countries. Ballistic soap doesn't spring back. It is not see-through. It's not an ideal material for doing a YouTube video, but it leaves a permanent wound cavity representing the temporary and permanent cavity. So you get a snapshot of all the maximum expansion and effects in the tissue, and you get the bullet depth matching, again, pig standard. This is called live pig standard ballistic soap. You made by melt clear glycerin soap from the store for a minute in a microwave safe container. Slowly mix 2 packets of Knox gelatin in about 3/4 cup of water and add that to your mix. And they don't specify how much to do here. While stirring, and you add in ground cinnamon to get rid of the bubbles, and then you refrigerate it for 2 hours after you've got it to mix, and then you melt it over low heat again, and then refrigerate it in a mold. Now that's the best explanation I could find for it. Or you spend $70 for an 8-inch by 8-inch by 10-inch block. Okay, what's the other alternatives? Okay, some of you look on YouTube and see the clear ballistics. Now again, this ballistic soap would expand and stay stuck. It might even blow open. Ballistic gelatin expands and contracts and emulates a lot of, if not all of the characteristics of porcine tissue versus porcine jello versus human tissue, and match so closely that 10% ballistics gel, FBI standard, is really supposed to represent fat, skin, muscle tissue, and internal organs, specifically abdominal cavity. Because it's not a cavity, it's filled with, well, effluent and your intestines. That's where it came from. So it is absolutely supposed to do that. So 10% ballistic gel is supposed to represent what really happens with 3¼ inch depth of a BB gun pellet. So what else can you use? Well, several companies came out with artificial material, basically clear, like window sealant grade stuff mixed together and made to where you could use it and you'd shoot it maybe once. Some of it was remeltable. The one that came out on top and you see on YouTube is clear ballistics, 10% gelatin, FBI equivalent, in 6-inch by 6-inch by 16-inch blocks or 2.5 gallon. That was $150, then it's $130. Now it's $77. Why? Because ballistic soap, which is nowhere near the same, is cheaper. It's sold openly. You can get it and you can remelt it a ridiculously large number of times, more possibly than clear ballistics, because it doesn't have to be clear. It just has to work. And it's workable and effective to X number of dozen times remelting, just like clear ballistics. But clear ballistics goes from being nice and clear to where you can do a really cool YouTube video or real serious testing, down to being nearly impervious to being seen through and looking as bad as traditional ballistic gel. And if you're not aware of it, Knox gelatin or whatever you get from the store, or Jello gelatin made into ballistic jelly, it's mostly see-through, but it's not as see-through as clear ballistics. Another thing that happened that might have lowered the price is everybody noticing a certain Tal Fledermaus video where they talk about fishing lure plastic for making those weird rubbery fake baits you put on your hook. If you go to a fishing store, you'll find them. There's a clear plastic version of it, so you can customize it with colors, or even use it to make really cool art pieces. The material is called Plastisol, but there's variations of it. It's a rubber material, and one of them, the medium or the heavy or light or whatever they call it, viscosity, hard or medium or soft, it's called soft bait. One of them is almost but not quite the equivalent to 10% or 20% gel. Someone noticed that, and on Tal Fledermaus, they did the video. Now, 9 pounds of it, which might be the equivalent to a 5-gallon container because the density is wrong or something, is Bait Plastics Premium Lure Plastisol 242 medium formula, almost $50. Okay, that's really cheap compared to the $150 original cost for a clear ballistics or whatever block. Another one, Plastisol brand, fishing making plastic rubber, #1 plus good, $60, 9-pound block, or 8 by 8 by 18 or 5-gallon. Depending on the density, it's going to be 9 pounds, 17 pounds, or other. Or is it just acting like the equivalent because it doesn't need to be as dense on a physics level and still provide the physics of ballistic gel? There's also Bait Plastics Polysol brand. That's another product that came out. There's a couple of dozen of them, including companies that made a tube you shoot into that contained, well, ballistic soap that would expand and not contract, that wouldn't spring back. So the reason I'm making this video is I was looking up something totally different and I got distracted. That's really what happened. So this is a dump of data. Now let's bring up a $150 ballistic solution, synthetic clear ballistics on Amazon. They sell ballistic media on Amazon, but they get nervous if you buy a BB gun. Now, let's talk about something completely different. Pellets. BB gun pellets, 17 caliber and 18.7 caliber. They're made of lead normally, but they can be made out of all sorts of materials. Some of the better ones to be used for hunting or maybe even for self-defense are made out of plastics or zinc. Now, they have a huge amount of variation to them, but one of the weird things I found is you can buy lead wire or metal wire and also hard plastic wire or other materials, not just lead, that are exactly the right caliber. For $7, you can get a pound of lead wire, it's about 3 feet of it, and make a bunch of BB gun pellets. It's 18.7 caliber, but you can squeeze it into shape. Another thing I was looking at for some reason, you can get an 8-shot Crossman speed loader, which is basically a revolver for shooting BB gun pellets. You can buy for $14 2,000 number 3 25 caliber buckshot steel balls. Coincidentally, this is Amazon. You can get 3,000 of the same thing for $22. You can get rifled barrels, 17 caliber, from a Daisy 880 Powerline pellet gun off Amazon. If you're not aware of it, that's the one that's able to tolerate having an actual firearms cartridge fired through it, because it's just a 17 HMR barrel that was put to use in a BB gun or pellet gun. Yeah, it's not quite long enough by BB gun or rifle standards, but it's long enough to be legal, and it contains a mechanism to put the pellets in, so you can just use it as an air gun. And you could combine it with a speed loader, aka just a revolver, and use it as a multi-shot. And then someone came up with a design where you put in the lead wire, it chops off a piece using something like that, puts it in the pathway, fires it, and it keeps going. So it's a semi-automatic pellet gun that shoots squared-off slugs instead of making him aerodynamic, because he made a self-defense weapon because he's in Czechoslovakia, or not Czechoslovakia, in the Ukraine, and he's literally using a lead wire cutting wheel gun that uses oxyacetylene or propane or butane to shoot pellets at Russian fighters. So that happened. So anyway, then I went off on another tangent. The Betsy Seisgun from Jurassic Park, that thing they go kaboom in the original movie, that makes shockwaves, and they called it sonar or erroneously X-rays or whatever to find the velociraptor under. You know the place. It showed it being loaded from the top, and I didn't know that existed. The one I could find is a patent for one that uses a hammer blow to the top and detonates something underground. This is literally a gun, so I'm including the information. The Betsy M3 Seisgun, a 90 kilogram, $5,000 to $15,000 gun. It literally is a gun, but the Internet Movie Database for firearms doesn't talk about it. It's a modified 21 millimeter 8-gauge industrial shotgun, electrically firing a 90 gram or 3-ounce steel slug into the ground to create a shockwave. If you're not aware of it, industrial shotguns are 83 caliber, but 82 caliber is a sporting version of this 8-gauge shoulder mount cannon. So that happened. Anyway, I found it annoying that it's one of the few things that is obviously a firearm-ish item, but they won't include it on the synopsis for the movie. So anyway, this is the data dump about random stuff that I originally started looking this up, and you know what I started off looking up? Blanks. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with all.